By the early 2000s, the sight of a space shuttle soaring into the heavens had become an almost routine spectacle, a powerful symbol of human ingenuity. The program had weathered challenges, celebrated triumphs, and made space access seem almost commonplace. But the story of Space Shuttle Columbia's final mission, STS-107, serves as a harrowing reminder that spaceflight is never, ever routine. The Space Shuttle Columbia disaster is a story etched into the history of space exploration, a tragedy born from a complex chain of events. To truly understand what happened, we need to go back to the beginning and walk through the mission, step by step. Columbia itself, designated OV-102, was the trailblazer. As the very first space-rated orbiter, it had paved the way for the entire fleet, completing 27 successful missions since its maiden voyage. It was a veteran of the skies. Its 28th mission was unique. Unlike many flights focused on constructing the International Space Station, STS-107 was a dedicated 16-day science expedition. Packed inside its cargo bay was the SpaceHab Research Module, a laboratory for over 80 experiments. Leading this ambitious endeavor was a diverse crew of 7, Commander Rick Husband, Pilot William McCool, Mission Specialists Kalpana Chawla, David Brown, and Laurel Clark, Payload Commander Michael Anderson, and Ilan Ramon, the first Israeli astronaut. For them, this flight was the culmination of years of training. It's January 16, 2003. After several delays, the morning dawns crisp and clear over the Kennedy Space Center. A palpable sense of excitement fills the air as thousands of spectators gather, their eyes fixed on the iconic silhouette of Columbia. At 10:39 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the countdown reaches 0. With a deafening roar, Columbia launches flawlessly on its 28th mission. It gracefully clears the tower, rolling onto its back as it thunders towards orbit. From every vantage point on the ground, the ascent appears picture-perfect. But an event, unseen and unheeded by most, had just sealed the fate of the orbiter and its 7 astronauts. On board was a crew of 7, each a specialist at the top of their field. Commander Rick Husband, a veteran pilot. Pilot William "Willie" McCool on his first spaceflight. Mission Specialist Kalpana Chawla, the first Indian-American woman in space. David Brown, a physician and aviator. And Laurel Clark, a flight surgeon. And Payload Specialists Michael Anderson, who oversaw the science experiments, and Ilan Ramon, a decorated fighter pilot and Israel's very first astronaut. For Ramon, the mission held profound personal significance. He carried with him a small Torah scroll that had survived the Holocaust, a symbol of resilience flying high above the earth. They were more than just a crew, they were a close-knit team, ready to embark on a dedicated 16-day science mission, a flight designated STS-107. The launch on January 16, 2003, was picture-perfect, a thundering spectacle of controlled power. But hidden within that ascent was a fatal flaw. At 81.7 seconds after liftoff, as Columbia tore through the atmosphere at over twice the speed of sound, a briefcase-sized piece of insulating foam broke away from the external fuel tank's left bipod ramp. This foam wasn't for structure. Its purpose was to prevent ice from forming on the super-cold tank, ice that could itself become dangerous debris. But the foam itself proved to be the danger. Weighing just 1.67 pounds, it was traveling at a relative velocity of over 500 miles per hour when it slammed into the leading edge of the shuttle's left wing. The impact, captured by long-range cameras, was a brief, almost insignificant-looking puff of dust against the massive vehicle. On the ground, however, some people did notice. During the standard review of launch footage the next day, a team of engineers at the Johnson Space Center spotted the foam strike. They were concerned. The wing's leading edge was protected by panels of a material called reinforced carbon-carbon, or RCC, designed to withstand the searing heat of re-entry. But its resistance to kinetic impact was a known vulnerability. The engineers, part of the debris assessment team, formally requested that the Department of Defense use its powerful spy satellites to take high-resolution images of Columbia's left wing to assess the damage. It was a request that seemed logical, even critical, but incredibly, it was denied. NASA management, conditioned by years of previous seemingly harmless foam strikes on other missions, concluded the risk was acceptable. They believed that even if there was damage, there was nothing the crew could do about it anyway. This phenomenon, later identified as normalization of deviance, created a blind spot, a catastrophic failure of imagination that sealed Columbia's fate before it had even completed its first day in orbit. Unaware of the fierce debate on the ground and the mortal danger they were in, The crew of STS-107 got to work. Their home for the next 2 weeks was a laboratory in the sky. Operating around the clock in 2 shifts, they worked through a packed schedule of over 80 scientific experiments housed in the SpaceHab research module. They studied the effects of microgravity on prostate cancer cells, cultivated delicate crystals for potential new medicines, and even observed how fire behaves without gravity, all in the name of advancing human knowledge. They were scientists, explorers, and teachers, taking time to connect with students on Earth, sharing the magic of their journey. Footage from inside the orbiter shows them not just as astronauts, but as people. We see them laughing, floating effortlessly, and gazing in awe at the breathtaking tapestry of the Earth below. They were living the dream, creating a trove of memories, blissfully unaware they would never get the chance to share them with their loved ones back home. On the morning of February 1st, 2003, the crew prepared for their return. The 16-day mission had been a resounding success. Now, it was time to come home. At 8:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Columbia fired its orbital maneuvering engines, committing the shuttle to its fiery descent through the atmosphere. The plan was to glide across the United States, from California to a landing at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. As Columbia hit the upper atmosphere, the laws of physics took over. The friction of air molecules against the shuttle's belly generated incredible heat, reaching temperatures of 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This is where the thermal protection system was supposed to do its job. But on the left wing, there was a breach. The foam strike had punched a hole, estimated to be 6 to 10 inches wide, in RCC panel number 8. It was a tiny flaw in a system that demanded perfection. At 8:53 a.m., as Columbia soared over the California coast, the first sign of trouble appeared. Sensors in the left wing began to register an abnormal rise in temperature. On the crew's displays and in mission control, these were just numbers, anomalies that were initially puzzling, not alarming. But they were the first whispers of a looming catastrophe. Superheated gas, a plasma hotter than molten lava, was now pouring through the breach, eating away at the wing's internal aluminum structure. Over the next few minutes, a cascade of failures began. More temperature and pressure sensors in the left wing went offline, one by one. The crew would have seen the master alarm, their screens filling with fault messages. On the ground, amateur astronomers and early morning observers in Texas began to see something terrifying. The brilliant streak of the re-entering shuttle was shedding smaller, glowing pieces. The wing was disintegrating from the inside out. At 8:59 a.m., Commander Husband keyed his microphone, his voice calm despite the chaos unfolding around him. "Roger, but..." It was the last transmission ever received from Columbia. In mission control, the flight director Leroy Kane watched as telemetry from the vehicle vanished from his screens. The data streams flatlined, the voice loop fell silent. Columbia was gone. On the morning of February 1st, 2003, after 16 days in orbit, the Space Shuttle Columbia began its fiery descent through Earth's atmosphere. In mission control, the mood was routine, anticipating a standard landing at Kennedy Space Center. But then, the data stream began to falter. First, temperature sensors in the left wing went offline, then more. On the ground, observers in California, Arizona, and New Mexico reported seeing unusual flashes of debris shedding from the orbiter as it streaked across the dawn sky, a sight that was anything but normal. The final garbled transmission came from Commander Rick Husband. "Roger, but..." before communication was lost completely. In a matter of moments, traveling at over 12,000 miles per hour, Columbia disintegrated over Texas. The nation watched in horror as the symbol of its spacefaring ambition was torn apart. The subsequent search and recovery operation was the largest in U.S. history, with thousands of volunteers and officials combing through an immense debris field to recover every possible fragment of the shuttle and its precious crew. All 7 crew members were lost. Commander Rick Husband, pilot William McCool, mission specialist Kalpana Chawla, Laurel Clark, David Brown, and Michael Anderson, alongside Ilan Ramon, a colonel in the Israeli Air Force and the first Israeli astronaut. They were scientists, pilots, doctors, and explorers, representing the pinnacle of human curiosity and courage. Their mission, STS-107, was a dedicated science flight, carrying dozens of experiments that they had worked on tirelessly for 16 days. The Columbia Accident Investigation Board, or CAIB, was formed to answer the terrible question, what went wrong? By painstakingly reassembling the recovered wreckage, investigators began to piece together the shuttle's final moments. The focus quickly turned to the left wing, which showed signs of extreme internal heat damage. The crucial clue, however, was found not in the debris, but in footage from the launch 16 days earlier. Just 82 seconds after liftoff, a briefcase-sized piece of insulating foam from the external tank's bipod ramp broke away and struck the leading edge of Columbia's left wing. The impact, at a relative velocity of over 500 miles per hour, went largely unassessed. While in orbit, some engineers raised concerns, but without clear images of the damage, management concluded it posed no significant risk. The CAIB report would later criticize this as an example of normalization of deviance. Foam strikes had happened on previous missions without catastrophic consequences, leading NASA's culture to accept the flaw as an unavoidable and survivable part of flight. The investigation revealed the tragic truth. That small chunk of foam sealed the shuttle's fate. It punched a hole in the wing's delicate, heat-resistant carbon panels. For 16 days, the crew orbited Earth, unaware of the mortal wound to their vehicle. Upon re-entry, superheated atmospheric gases reaching thousands of degrees penetrated the breach. The plasma burned through the wing's internal aluminum structure like a blowtorch, causing it to fail, leading to a catastrophic loss of control and the orbiter's ultimate destruction. In the wake of the disaster, NASA grounded the shuttle fleet for over 2 years. The CAIB report prompted not just technical fixes but a deep organizational soul-searching. This led to massive changes in safety protocols. The external tank was redesigned to minimize foam shedding. New mandatory procedures were implemented, including detailed photographic inspection of the shuttle after launch and the development of the Orbiter Boom Sensor System, a 50-foot extension for the shuttle's robotic arm, allowing astronauts to inspect the heat shield in orbit for any damage. Columbia's crew are remembered as explorers and heroes, whose loss fundamentally reshaped how we approach spaceflight. Their sacrifice forced a new era of vigilance, leading to the development of on-orbit repair techniques and a cultural shift that placed safety above all else. Their courage continues to inspire, a solemn reminder that every great leap forward comes with profound risks. The lessons learned from their loss are embedded in the DNA of every subsequent human spaceflight program, ensuring their legacy is not one of tragedy alone, but of a hard-won wisdom that protects the explorers who follow in their path, reaching for the stars.